And so second, remembering the heroes, as you have it in your title as well, not only commemorating the victims, but remembering the heroes. In our view, not enough information is out there and in the conscience of the broader public about the resistance of the Roma communities. A lot of stories, a lot of their stories are unheard and unwritten until this day. And so looking forward, or working in the scope of this project is very important, as it looks forward and works on new information about the resistance of the Roma communities. And also the results I think this project will yield will be extremely important also for the communities, but also for all of us here in the foundation, in terms of being able to convey the results and the findings to society in general and to a broader public. So I think it's our, I can say it's our conviction that we need to learn more, we need to understand better, and we need to work harder, probably, to work against prejudices of all sorts and of all kinds in the general public. So without further ado, I know you have a lot of work ahead of you, a lot of discussions and exchange of views and thoughts. So I want to thank everybody really very much for all the engagement and the work involved, for all of your hard work that you have put into this project and into this webinar. Especially in these times, I think we see that we need to focus and even enhance our activities in that field. So having said all that, thanks for having me in your webinar. I will stick around for a couple of more minutes. All the very best. Let's stay in touch. Let's continue with our dialogue, and all the very best for you and your activities. Greetings from Berlin.
Thank you so much, Dr. Despot, for your words, and this is really important for us to have you here. So without further ado, I'd like to give the floor to Timea Junghaus, the Executive Director of the European Roma Institute for Arts and Culture. Timea?
Thank you, Anna. And also thank you, Dr. Despot, for the excellent introduction on the activities and circle of responsibility of the Foundation of Remembrance, Responsibility and Future, the Stiftung FAZ. I also would like to welcome the board members who have joined, the distinguished scholars and the ERIAC membership, so dear invitees. This is the first international assembly organized by the European Roma Institute for Arts and Culture, where we present and discuss the research conducted since July 2019 on the history of Roma resistance. This is an initiative that is supported by the Stiftung FAZ, and we are hoping that this is a beginning of a longer-term, deeper collaboration. The driving point of today is that if we observe Roma scholarship, we see that in the recent decades, the re-exploration of the forgotten and unwritten history of the Roma Holocaust demonstrated that Roma did have the power to resist oppression and take part in different forms of resistance, and those could inhabit a different role than that of the victim. In this immersive unlearning and rewriting process of writing together Roma history, the history of resistance has now slowly replaced the history of oppression. And in the current new research conducted with the leadership of ERIAC and with the expertise of all of you, with the ERIAC membership and the external experts, scholars, we testify that Roma did take an active and conscious role in shaping their lives and defining their own fate and future, both during the Holocaust and in its aftermath. This research reveals new sources, new testimonies and documentation to demonstrate how Roma stood out with their conduct as compared to other inmates and victims in the camps, and developed several survival strategies to preserve and maintain human dignity. We collect the history of escapes. We document and rewrite the uprisings on May 16 and the resistance on August 2nd, 1944. We explore the memory of the Roma heroes and the non-Roma supporters of Roma resistance, as well as the active and heroic participation of Roma people in the partisan movements around Europe under the National Socialist regime. And you might ask why this is of utmost importance to ERIAC. This relearning of our Roma history emerges an inspiring model to Roma knowledge, agency, and consciousness. But what is more important is that to preserve the stories of Roma victims and survivors and to take writing of Roma history into our own hands is a form of cultural survivor and a demonstration of our ethical and political commitment to the future of the Roma community. I'm here today to take notes and learn from you, and I'm looking forward to a very fruitful and heated debate, as always.
Thank you, Timea. Thank you for your excellent welcoming remarks. I will just take the floor just for a few minutes before I give the floor and the stardom to our excellent researchers to share a little bit of their findings. I would like to share with you just a little bit about where this project began and how it has been shaped through the last few months, so that you can understand also some of our underlying approaches and questions that are guiding this process. So as Tima has already mentioned, the Roma resistance in the Roma context of history, but also of Roma discourse, especially nowadays, has become a very powerful symbol and really an event in history that has been referenced and is continuing to inspire the new generations of young Roma and also a new generation of scholars dealing with this issue. So since 2010, the Roma resistance, the event at the Auschwitz-Birkenau concentration camp that took place on May 16th, has become a symbol thanks to activist work of Le Voix Rome, a Roma organization in France. We have Saimir Mile today with us, who will be speaking about it towards the end of the webinar today. And since then, it has become a very important discursive symbol for us. But and Andrea Petrus, I would like to ask you here to share the screen with some of the slides. So we were quite taken aback when last year, on the occasion of the 16th of May, the Auschwitz-Birkenau concentration camp museum in Poland has released a tweet in which it said, and I'm hoping that Andrea will share that tweet with us, in which it was said that actually there has been no uprising in Auschwitz-Birkenau concentration camp at all. And if there were some acts of resistance, they were passive and they took place in another moment of time. Andrea, can you show us the tweet? Andrea Petrus, I think, has started sharing the screen. In any case, this revelation that came last year was based on new research that has been developed by historians in the museum, and somehow put into question, and of course generated very heated debates in the Roma context, that maybe there hasn't been Roma resistance at all. And for us at ERIAC, we found this extremely preoccupying, because beyond that one historical event, quite well documented, by the way, this has become such a symbol that suddenly dispelling it would turn that momentum of trying to reveal other stories of resistance and try to create a narrative in which we as Roma are not only victims, but have also had acts of bravery, acts of heroism, and have contributed to improving or fighting for our fate as Roma, but also contributed to the fight on the right side of history in the national struggles in different countries where we lived. So this is why we created this project, and with the support of FAZ Foundation, we managed to create a small I would say, a pilot step in trying to reveal this Roma resistance narrative, not as related to only one event in history, but also as an attitude. And the basis of this project were on the fact that there have been different acts of heroism in different periods of time. So we should explore different geographies and different chapters of history also to see what examples we can document and bring to public attention. And this is why we started with a workshop in Stockholm. I see that there is still no images to this. In any case, we have started with a meeting in Stockholm in which we brought together scholars of Roma and Roma background and activists, public intellectuals, for a meeting organized together with in the framework of the Roma Heritage Network Initiative, to try to discuss what does really resistance mean, and to not only try to reveal the personal stories, but also the stories of different communities from different countries, and try to see if we can manage to create a definition and a matrix of analysis that would allow us then to try to really put that knowledge into a systematic and rigorous academic narrative. So in Stockholm, in the meeting that we created, we came up with a definition that highlighted a few very important points. After discussions with the participants, the working definition that we came up with was, and I quote here, Roma resistance is an active response to consciously confront historical and contemporary phenomenon of anti-Gypsyism, both collectively and individually. What it means then is that Roma resistance is this moment of standing against injustice, a moment in which you take the conscious decision of trying to confront the injustice, disregarding of what it can mean for you as a person and for you as a community. So this is also about trying to highlight that it's trying to confront different injustices. This doesn't only refer to the period then of the mass murder of Roma during the Second World War, but we suddenly came up with stories from period of Roma slavery to stories during the communist times, for example, in which suddenly we found numerous stories of Roma resistance heroes. In the matrix that we created, and unfortunately, I can try to see if I can maybe share some of those screens to illustrate this discussion. One moment, please. Let's see if I can. Okay, let me try to share my screen because I see that there has been some issue. If you can see here, this is the matrix that we created. I hope you can see my screen. We have created a matrix of analysis that would allow us to speak about these different individual and collective acts of bravery and heroism. On the one hand, we asked about the how. The how are the different types of Roma resistance that we have encountered, from escapes to saving children to active resistance fight, for example, in the framework of the partisan movement. Then we asked about who. And this is really important because when you read or hear about the Roma history, we tend to be described in very anonymous terms. It's always the Roma people. We rarely speak about specific communities or specific individuals who should be saved from oblivion, who have a name and who have a story that is an inspiring story for us. So this is why we thought we need to bring in specific stories of people so that we can create these heroic figures also in our historiography. Then we asked about where, and where are the sites of resistance. This is important for us again because the Roma history tends to be told many times in a certain vacuum. So we are seen as kind of detached from the history of the nations and specific territories where we live. And we thought that we should actually try to root the Roma history in the context of local, national, and European histories by marking the sites that still remain today forgotten, unmarked, and unpreserved. So this allows us to create this map of Roma resistance historical sites. And then we asked about the when, and the when is the time period. If we stick to that definition of Roma resistance as an attitude, then what we will realize is that it's an attitude, or it's an active, conscious decision to confront injustice that has happened throughout the history of Roma in Europe and in different chapters. And specific stories that we found were also referring to not only the framework of the World War II, but also in the period before, also in the context, for example, of the Spanish history, taking us back as far as the Catholic kings, and also more recent stories in the aftermath of the war. So we decided to try to expand that not only the geography, but also the time frame of Roma resistance stories that we speak about. I think I will end here just so that we save time, and I would really love to give space to our researchers. And this first assumptions that we have in the project, we made an open call for researchers. And it's been a very successful call in the sense of very many people, both Roma and non-Roma academic scholars have applied, and it was a big challenge for us to decide. But I'm happy to say that we have an excellent group of scholars coming from different geographies with different engagements, and all of whom are really big experts who are helping us to unravel the story of Roma resistance. All of them but one are here with us today. Lise Fossino, Dr. Lise Fossino for France, she was not able to join us today, but she's been doing a tremendous amount of research unraveling Roma resistance stories. And before I give them the floor, I would just like to mention that this is really important for us, and this is timely, because we are now reaching the point of when the era of the witness is gone. And unfortunately, this year, we've already had to face deaths of two of our very precious heroes and survivors of the war. Raymond Gruyem, a Roma French resistance fighter who has died recently, and who is the story of the Roma resistance hero. Absolutely. And just a few days ago, we've lost Peter Höhlenreiner, Sinto, who also survived numerous concentration camps, and who has been also a very inspiring figure in this Roma movement. So I would just like to say that this is a great moment for us to try to unravel these stories while we still can. So without interrupting, I would now like to give the floor to Dr. Yekaterina Dunayeva. I would like to see, Katya, are you here with us? And
yes.
Okay. Let me just check if we are making it possible to share your presentation. Andrea Petrus, are you still here? Can you try to share your screen?
I'm here again. Yeah, I do it. Just give me a second.
Okay.
Do you want her biography?
Yes, if you could just maybe shortly screen the biography, and then let's try to go directly with the presentation. Again, apologies for this tiny glitches in our presentation. And I'll just say a few words. So Dr. Yekaterina Dunayeva is a PhD. She received her PhD at the University of Oregon in 2014, and she's been very active academically since then. Currently, she's an assistant professor of political science at Pazmany Peter Catholic University. And she's also very much engaged in the critical Romani studies discourse as one of the editors of the Critical Romani Studies journal. And Katya has an excellent scholarship and is a big expert on Roma history as well. And she's been researching also the contemporary Russian and Hungarian politics in this regard. So we are really happy to have Katya here with us. So Katya, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. I can also share my screen. I have only 2 slides, or if Andrea, you can put it up. Okay, so let me just start. I was focusing on Hungary. That was my case study, and one of my primary goals was to try to synthesize the research with a very specific goal in mind. Thank you. That's it. So good. Yes. On not only understanding what is resistance, but also debating how resistance can really be excavated, taken out of all the data that we have available. As we've heard already, one of the challenges of conducting research currently is that much of the data that we have to work with is secondary data. So as I've been looking through definitions of resistance, there are a few of them that stood out really. One is the very generic definition. What is resistance? Resistance is an act of fighting against something. So this is a Cambridge dictionary, but in many of the literature, this is the definition that is being used. So I tried to match definitions of resistance with some of the testimonies that I've been reading for this project. So here is one of them. This is a Hungarian Roma survivor who was deported to Ravensbrück. It was impossible to escape from there or to show resistance. That would have been a sure end. And so seemingly this might sound like somebody basically giving up a resistance or giving up a fight against their oppressors. In the meantime, as you read through the story, you really see a fighter in this particular survivor. So another definition, which already came closer to something that what I was looking for, was from a more recent specific collection of work that looks at Roma resistance. Also regionally in Europe, small sets of activities motivated by love or by conscious attempts to defy the Nazis and save lives. So another testimony that I would like to match that with from another Holocaust survivor. I kept saying to myself, I can't submit to hopelessness because then I will never get out of here. So this is a simple feeling, and yet it somehow implies also feelings of wanting to survive. So my definition of resistance was very much informed by a piece of work by James Scott. He actually looks at peasants, looking at how peasants are motivated in their everyday existence to defy orders. And so I call it everyday forms of resistance. So I focused on invisible power of the victims, in this case of Roma, as subtle forms of power that they possessed against the regime, against their oppressors, against the system that was oppressing them. And what was I'm sorry, can you go back for 1 second, Andrea? Sorry. And so what was obvious is that researchers must analyze power dynamics. So a focus on how power operates in that very context. And so this project looks at individual contexts for a reason, because contextualizing power relations is necessary to actually see how power dynamics operate and what shapes and forms they take in those specific instances. So analyzing power dynamics, contestation of power, and reinterpretation of understanding of the past through oral histories. Those were the most important points. And contestation of power in this instance was also wanting to survive, the ability to imagine a life not under the oppression, right? So a discursive form of resistance is something that emerged. So this was, the importance of it was a symbolic punishment of the enemy, imagination of a future revenge, preserving love and humanity in the face of dehumanizing circumstances, undermining the Nazi authority, inspiring hope. So for example, the quote I just used, that is also inspiring hope, convincing oneself that they have the ability to survive. So I've been looking at some of the literature songs that were preserved through other scholars. And this was a very important, I think, and interesting piece of resistance. I call it discursive resistance. So these songs tell the story of resistance, a struggle, or a desire to survive. Some are vengeful and unforgiving, explicitly voicing specific revenge upon the murderers, so upon the Nazis. There is some literature about this. There's not much. I only found literature in Hungarian. So the literature talks about these camp songs, or lágerénekek in Hungarian, which have incorporated lyrics rooted in Romani cursing songs, átokdalok, and borrowed some cultural elements that help Roma persevere in the dire conditions. So this perseverance is also a form of resistance in my analysis. Some songs, for example, demand supernatural forces or Almighty God to punish the Germans and Hitler. Some recorded ones. So I give an example here in the next slide of a recorded song. Unfortunately, my understanding is that there's not much that was preserved until today, because many of them were never recorded. Many of them were never in writing or in any preservable format. So I would like to show you one example of a discursive Discursive Resistance. This is a song that I translated, so I apologize if it doesn't rhyme. And I'd like to read it out loud too. The ghetto room in Komarom is well known by all the Roma. We cry to our families, oh, how stinky our room is. I'm a prisoner of the ghetto. I live there and they must know. My whole body is worn out. Oh God, make a miracle come true. Make Hitler into a ball with a rope around his neck to drag through the city's main street. I am in the ghetto still, with all my hair cut down to skin. Oh God, what am I to do? Should I run or should I stop? If I run, they'll kill for sure. If I stop, they'll beat to death. So one of those rare examples of preserved songs. Komarom was one of the most hopeless sites, so to speak, of Roma, where they were either crammed together and then deported from Hungary, or some of them actually were died there from forced labor or starvation. So Komarom is really a meeting point for many of the Roma. This is a point of remembrance that many of them share. And this is one of the songs in which you see that there is a very clear and specific desire to take revenge on the oppressors. So these are the examples of some of the resistance acts that I focused on from Hungary. And I'll stop here and we can move on. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Katya. This is fascinating. Thank you. I would now like to give the floor to Dr. Daniel Wojak. Daniel, yes, we can see you. Great. Andrea, if you could, yes, great. Thank you. Share the presentation of Daniel and his short biography, just so that you can get to know him a little better. Daniel Wojak, Dr. Daniel Wojak is a very accomplished scholar and a big expert of Roma Holocaust history in Croatia especially, but actually in all of the area of the Balkan countries. And he is now working at the Institute of Social Sciences Ivo Pilar in Zagreb, and has authored multiple studies, researchers, and books around this topic. And we are very happy to have Dr. Wojak here with us. He has been contributing with a tremendous amount of research on the many different stories in different countries in the Balkans. So, Dr. Wojak, the floor is yours. Please try to unmute yourself, Daniel, so that we can hear you. Okay, now we can hear you very nicely. Yes, thank you.
Can you hear me? Okay. I have now just a little minutes to say something. Can you put up my PowerPoint, please? Presentation. I have focused my research on independent states of Croatia. But later, with Terjah, I have completed research of ex-Yugoslavian countries from Slovenia, Serbia, Macedonia, Montenegro, and Macedonia. Result of my research, can you show my PowerPoint, please?
It's your PowerPoint.
I cannot see it. Can you see it?
Yes, we can see it, yes.
Okay. In short, I have in the beginning been very skeptical about my findings, but when I analyzed archive material, especially, I have found, for example, 6 Romani resistant heroes, 23 artifact objects, and 36 sites of resistance, and 27 Roma resistant biographic for the Croatia. I would not give the data the same for the ex-Yugoslavia, but I would say the total that I have found from the ex-Yugoslavia, from the Serbia, Slovenia, Bosnia, Montenegro, and Macedonia, the 15 artifact objects, 101 sites of resistance, 91 resistant biographic, and 8 Roma resistant hero. And the next slide, please. I have chosen 2 examples that is most, I would say, showing the dimension of Roma resistance in Croatia and in Serbia. For example, when I started with my research 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I have found one data that still ask me for continuing researching. This is data about the testimony on one partisan general after Second World War who said that he has found some Roma fighters, Roma families who fled during the Ustasha deportation to Jasenovac, found in some forest they are still alive, and this Roma has been joining the partisans and formed the first Roma partisan unit. This is very important because I later tried to find out, I would say, confirmation in the archive material. And just today and last week I was in one local archive, and I found something that can be confirming about existence of the Roma partisan unit. And this is very important because in the partisan movement, in the history of the partisan movement, nobody has said anything about Roma. We have national minorities, Czech, Slovak, Germans, for example, Germans, Italians, and so on, joining the partisan movement, but nobody know anything about Roma participation. And I will say for the next slide, please. And one example for the Roma resistance hero that has been very, I would say, very surprising for me and inspiring to share her story. Her name was Milica Katic. She was the Roma woman from Grabovac that is very near the Belgrade region. In August 1941, she started to help the partisans by informing about the movements of the German soldiers. And after that, she joined the first Posavina partisan movement unit with her two sons. And what happens? You know that Roma were not only the victims by the Germans, but also they were victims by the Chetniks, who are the soldiers of the collapsed Kingdom of Yugoslavia. And she was thrown to the jail by the Chetniks and given to the Germans. She was then tortured and later killed. And I have give her just the quote about her destiny, and I will just read one sentence. She never betrayed anybody. She never betrayed anybody. This is very important because we know that in the history of the Roma, especially is pronounced the Roma man. And we are lacking especially information, data about position of Roma women. And Milica Katic showed us that Roma women were equally brave and participated in the resistance as the men. And also, this is one of the information that we must acknowledge and must deeply research. Just a few scholarship researchers like Rajko Đurić know about Milica Katic, and I think that our duty is to share her destiny and share the destiny about the position of the Roma woman in the resistance movements. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Daniel. This is absolutely fascinating, and thank you for also being sensitive to the women heroes, because as you're very right that we don't hear enough about them. I would now like to invite Dr. Justyna Matkowska from Poland to share her presentation. Dr. Matkowska is a recent PhD defended just a few months ago in Poland. She's the third Roma woman in the country that has a PhD. We're really proud of that. And she has extensive experience both in the academia, but also in the activist world. I would just mention here that Justyna was for many years the plenipotentiary for minorities in the Lower Silesia region, which is very important. And she's also in her private time a performer and musician. So a woman of many talents. So thank you, Justina, for joining us, and please share your short presentation with us. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Anya. Good afternoon. So in my research, in my research, I focused on the Roma resistance in occupied Poland, and I would like to emphasize that the resistance in Poland has a unique character because of various forms of resistance. I divided collected material for 4 areas. The first was the case of Roma resistant events in occupied Poland, such as escape attempts from the camps at ghettos, Roma and Sinti resistance event on May 16, 1944 in Auschwitz-Birkenau, and Roma revolt in Kharkiv town and Roma uprising in Warsaw Ghetto. The following parts are Roma in Polish army, Roma in Polish resistance movement, and the last was the case of Romani woman resistance. And today I would like to present the story of Roma hero, Alfreda Markowska, called in the Romani community as Nocia. Can you please change the slide? Alfreda Markowska was born on May 10, 1926 in the area of Stanisławów. She is traditional Romani woman from the group of Polska Roma. Her family led the nomadic lifestyle. Her father traded horses and her mother raised the children, and she was also a fortune teller. And next slide, please. The outbreak of World War II found them in Lviv, and they escaped from the Red Army to the areas occupied by Germans. In the 1941, they in forest near Biała Podlaska, Nazi murdered the numbers of Alfreda's family, parents, siblings, and other relatives, in total between 65 to 85 Roma. And Alfreda was the only one who survived. She spent days searching in the forest for her family mass grave. After she found it, she walked in the places of concentration of Roma, including the ghetto in Lubin, Bełżec, and Łódź, from which she escaped each time. And in 1942, next slide, please. At the age of 16, she got married, but unfortunately, soon after, she and her husband were arrested by Ukrainian nationalists and then sent to the ghetto in Lublin. She managed to escape and settled back in Rozwadów, where she Roma were employed on railway as a part of forced labor. This job gave her access to train transporting Roma and Jews to extermination camps, including Auschwitz-Birkenau. Next slide, please. And during the transport stops, she managed to save children. Among them, she saved Karol Parnogierliński, later well-known sculptor, prose writer, and poet. Alfreda wanted to save everyone, especially the children who survived the pogroms. She secretly traveled to the places where Nazi murdered Roma community in search for children who could survive the executions. She returned with safe children to Rozwadów. Then she managed them false documents, and some of them she raised by herself, some she gave back to their families, and others she offered to Roma families. According to various sources, including the research commissioned by the Chancellery of President of Poland, she saved around 50 children. Next slide, please. And in 2000, yeah, that's the good one, I'm sorry. In 2006, Alfreda Markowska, as the first Roma, was awarded of the Commander's Cross with the Star of Order of Polonia Restituta by the President of Poland. In 2016, she was awarded the title of Honorary Citizen of the Gorzów Wielkopolski town. She also became a subject of documentary film titled Huridai, made by Agnieszka Arnold. And we can take the last slide. The image of Alfreda Markowska are on the two murals in Poland, one in Warsaw and one in Gorzów Wielkopolski. You can see the mural on this presentation. So thanks to the effort of Roma activists and also Polish government, Alfreda Markowska's story received publicity. Noncia is currently well known and celebrate Roma person in Poland. The story of her, Romani woman who saved the Roma and Jewish children, makes the resistant Roma resistant publicly known fact. And aside from popularizing the Roma resistance, it definitely helps the fight the anti-Gypsyism and promote the fate and genocide of Roma and Sinti during World War II. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Justyna. This is great that you're sharing this story. For those of us who are Polish here, the two of us, being Polish, Roma Noncia really is a huge inspiration, and it's just outstanding how many children, both Roma and Jewish, she managed to save. So it's a really important story, and Justyna and her research is also connecting many other Roma women's stories to save them also from oblivion. So we're very much looking forward to learning more. And now I would like to give the floor to Dr. Nico Rergo. Yes, Andrea, if you could put the little slide with the biography so we can present him. So Nico Rergo, this is his Roma traditional name. The formal ID name is Sergei Yermoshkin, and he's a Ukrainian. He's a linguist and a lawyer with extensive research and extensive publication curriculum. In many other subjects, but especially in linguistics, law, and also in Kalitrash, in the Roma Holocaust stories, also because many of his own relatives have perished during the Holocaust. So we're really happy to have Nico as one of our experts, contributing a lot to this project. So Nico, the floor is yours.
Excuse me. Do you copy me? Yes?
We hear you loud and clear. Thank you.
Thank you. It is a new mic, so I don't know how to manage it. So as you have understood, I am not classical historical researcher. And for me, when this project started, for me, the main question was the philosophy of our resistance. Why philosophy? Because I'm quite old, and I knew many of former resistance participants, and I don't know how to express this idea in English. Katya, if you know Russian, can you help me? Do you know?
Yes, I do.
So how to say in English? Я корю себя за идиотизм.
Вы себя ругаете за идиотизм?
Да. So let's say I curse myself for having been the great idiot some 20, 30 years ago, because these Roms, when they were alive, and it was a great pleasure to talk with, to speak with them, to listen to their histories. But really, we were idiots. I beg your pardon for this word, not very academic, but very real one, because me personally, we have not taken any note about this. And the first question for me, important, and I suppose for our history, I mean, Romani history, is the motivation. Because knowing the history generally, for example, in Poland, in Croatia, in Serbia, and in the Soviet Union, you understand, you have to understand that the situation in the Soviet Union, the former Soviet Union, was quite different from other countries. And for me, it was a great a big problem to try to understand why our Roms, who never in the Soviet time before war, they never had been politically active. They had no any pietет, Катя, pietет, pietет, уважение.
Respect.
Respect. Okay, thank you. They have no any respect for the state, because most of them they were nomad. And when the war started, and when the Romanian kingdom and Germans, Nazis, when they came here, so for me it was important to try to understand why they really had been in resistance. I have no prepared any presentation because I suppose it is not so, because I suppose it's more important to try to exchange opinions and to ask each of us. For example, I have questions for addressing for Katerina and for Daniel, but I'm proud of myself, let's say, because after war, who knows our history? I mean, the Soviet one. I think that Daniel knows his history perfectly, and Aurea as well, and Adrian, because all of us we were living in this communist countries. So the memory of resistance here, I state, the memory of resistance. Катя, пожалуйста, помогите еще. Как по-английски правильно сказать, не освещенная руководством коммунистической партии.
Давайте скажем, not influenced by the teachings of the Communist Party or by the influence.
Yes, but the Communist Party and the policy of the Communist Party was the light of God. You understand how to express? So if in any action during the war, there were no communist leader, small communist leader or big one, underground communist leader or official one. So all this was not exterminated, but it was all this in oblivion. It's right in English. It's in oblivion. So, and even working in at the archives, so I have access to any document, really. So it was so difficult to try to understand, even in the Communist Party archives, any information worth important for history. Just one word, just two words, not more. So I'm proud of myself because, and Adrian, I think it will be interesting for you as well. So I can, if you see, it is a dictionary, Romanian Russian dictionary, published by Romanian administration here, and the most important point of this dictionary is nothing. It's just a book, but this dictionary saved the life of our Rom, because I think you cannot hear, you can here, if you see, you don't see. Okay, so this guy, this young Rom, was knifed, or how to say, he was punched by knife. Yes, or I don't remember exactly from this author of this punch was a Romanian gendarme or policeman, but he had his this dictionary he had in his pocket, so the knife entered here. And here we have the the mark of this knife. And as well, I don't know, because as I have understood, as I have seen, Daniel has collected some artifacts, as you say, yeah, from. So me too, and I suppose it will be very important first proposition from my work or from our work. It is would be possible to make to organize an exhibition, for example, moving one.
Yes,
Yeah?
yes, Nico. This is something that we might also explore with regard to the project. Towards the end of today, I will share a little bit, just reveal a little bit of the secrets that we're cooking in terms of the outputs of this project. But if I could just interrupt you here, Nico, because as you know, we have very short time and we started really late. So maybe we can leave it here. I know that you have many questions, and I totally encourage that also
Just
towards, with each other. So
just one word. I started to make a list of partisans and underground workers. So you know about, yeah. So I would like to ask everybody of us and then the area to continue this work, to make this great list of all our partisans from Croatia, to Ukraine, etc., so on. So and not only to publish in a critical Roma research, but to make a memorial book, or I don't know how to say it in English, just because we have in Ukrainian we do it, but in English I never saw. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nico. And it's really important the fact that you also brought us to more general questions of how to disentangle, you know, the historical evidence that we find from the ideologies and you know, also the positionality of those who have been collecting this data. I think this is really important. And the list of the resistance heroes that you found is really quite impressive. So it's truly just outstanding to know how many stories of bravery you have. So thank you so much. I would now like to give the floor to Aurea Yutelte. I'm really sorry, apologies. Aurea, I'm really bad with pronouncing your last name. Aurea is a CEU alumni and also on her way to a PhD career, as I hear. And she has developed a lot of research on not only the historiography of the Roma Holocaust, but also on the practice of commemoration. And as a researcher and as an expert working closely with the Roma community, Aurea has also worked closely with the government and is now finalizing, as I understand, an edited book on Roma Holocaust in Lithuania. So we're really looking forward to this, to your book, and congratulations on being the editor. And we're really interested also in your findings in Lithuania. So the floor is yours, and thank you for joining us today.
Good afternoon. So first of all, I would like to thank for a chance to present my research on this occasion. I hope that this project will contribute in establishing the memory of Roma resistance as an important narrative in the existing fabric of Holocaust memories. And now I'll shortly introduce the context of my research. So for this project, I collected material on Roma resistance in Lithuania during the Second World War. Lithuania was occupied by the Nazi Germany from 1941 to 1944. According to official sources, during the Nazi occupation, no less than 500 Roma were killed in Lithuanian territory, which accounts for 1/3 of Roma who lived there at the time. However, it is assumed that the real number can be at least 2 times higher. And although Roma resistance is an extremely under-researched and poorly documented subject in Lithuania, I collected evidence of acts with elements of struggle such as hiding, escapes, physical attacks, and acts of saving others, including Jews, performed by Roma groups and individuals. And for the purpose of this event, I chose to present, in my opinion, one of the most impressive resistance stories from what I have found. It is a story of a Roma woman, Zofija Beresnevičiūtė Sinkevičienė, and here I will call her Zofija. And the story includes at least 2 escapes from concentration camps, a rescue of fellow prisoners, physical retaliation against a Nazi soldier, and destruction of Nazi documents. This is an intriguing one. Where possible, I will quote Zofija's own words from her oral history interview of 1999, kept in United States Holocaust Memorial Museum collection. So to begin with, Zofia, also known as Sofia and Sonia, was born in 1925 in the city of Panevėžys, now the fifth largest city of Lithuania, situated in the middle of the country. Zofia and her family lived sedentary, and she went to primary school. When the Second World War broke out, Zofia was 16 years old, and she remembers persecution of Jews in early years of Nazi occupation in her city, open quote. When the Jews were already executed, everything was taken, cleaned up, then they started catching the others, end quote, and by the others she means Roma. Although they witnessed executions and deportations of Jews, Zofia and her family still did not expect to be arrested. However, in January 1943, the whole family was taken to the Panevėžys ghetto by Nazi soldiers and their local collaborators. After a week, they were relocated to Pravieniškės concentration camp still in Lithuania. Soon after that, Zofia, who was 18 years old then, managed to escape the camp for the first time while walking from the place of detention to the forced labor site. She ran away through the site and was shot in the leg. Injured, she walked 120 kilometers back to her family home in Panevėžys. Soon after her arrival, someone recognized Zofia there, and she was arrested again. Zofia was then tortured by the Nazi soldiers to disclose people who helped her along the way, but she refused to name them and was returned to the Pravieniškės camp. There she met a former friend who told her about a planned mass shooting of Roma in that camp. The person instructed her to salute Hitler when they are all lined up and her name is called by the list. Zofia remembers, open quote, "They put 'good' on my last name when I raised my hand in German way." That night, Zofia saved several other Roma by instructing them both in Romanes and Lithuanian languages to raise their hands. Moreover, she pulled some children, including two of her brothers, out of the line and away from the site of mass shooting, in this way saving their lives. In late 1943, those Roma who survived the shooting were transported to a labor site in France. There, Zofia attacked a German soldier who was violent towards her and her other prisoners. Open quote, "She kicked me so hard, I fell backwards. I took a big tree branch. I hit him hard in the head. His head fell off." End quote. As a punishment, Zofia was thrown in a freezing water pit, and she survived only because she knew how to swim. However, even there, she continued to resist and did not leave the pit when instructed to do so by the Nazi officers who came to take her back to work, open quote. "They wanted to take me from there. I didn't go. I thought to myself, go to that water yourselves now," end quote. On the 15th of June 1944, Zofia was relocated to Germany, the only identified camp being Buchenwald concentration camp. She escaped the camp at least once. As mentioned in her testimony, she ran away to look for food in a nearby town and brought some bread to her fellow prisoners. In Germany, most likely the same Buchenwald camp, Zofia sabotaged Nazi administrative activities by destroying some documents in an office facility she was ordered to clean. This is very interesting, open quote. "Me and that girl washed that floor and saw some folders there. That girl read the last names, everything. I took an inkwell from the table and spilled it on those files and spilled it out. The German beat me. I spilled. He beat me very much for that folder." End quote. So she spilled ink on the papers, hoping to cover names of people mentioned in the documents. After that, Zofia remained imprisoned in Buchenwald until its liberation in April 1945. Before leaving, she was given a chance to move to the West instead of the Soviet Union, but chose to come back to occupied Lithuania. Zofia returned home on the 15th of October 1945. We don't know much about her life in Lithuania, but we know that she died on the 29th of December in 2016 in Panevėžys, Lithuania. And finally, I just want to mention that Zofia's story is one of a few documented resistance stories of Lithuanian Roma, and her continuous effort not only to survive, but to actively resist the persecution by, as already mentioned, interrupting Nazi punitive administrative activities, helping fellow prisoners, escaping from labor and concentration camps, and physically retaliating against persecutors, shows incredible bravery and will during the Second World War. And as already mentioned by Dr. Voyak, it is also important to mention that it's a story of a Roma woman who resisted. Sadly, Zofia's life story has not yet been commemorated, the parliament in Lithuania officially recognized the Roma Holocaust in 2019, but this act only commemorates the passive victimhood of Roma rather than their capacity to resist under very difficult circumstances. And having that in mind, I hope that my contribution to this project will present the struggle of Lithuanian Roma as something still to research and help crafting a new narrative of Roma agency in the face of oppression. Thank you.
Thank you, Aurea. This is truly an inspiring and absolutely incredible Hollywood-like scenario that you just depicted in front of us. So thank you really much, really so much for unraveling these stories and helping all of us learn about them. So this is truly very valuable. Thank you. And now I would like to ask Adrian Nicolae Fortuna from Romania to share his story with us today. Adrian is both a scholar and an activist. He has founded in 2018 the Center for Cultural and Social Research Roma Nerodimata, from which much of the very important oral history has been discovered and also published through a series of papers and scientific articles, especially regarding the deportation of Roma from Transnistria. And what's really important for us also is that Adrian is a big expert on Roma slavery, and he has been also bringing to our attention some of the stories that happened not only in the framework of the World War, but also in the context specifically of the Romanian slavery of Roma. So we're really happy to have Adrian with us. Adrian Nicu, thank you so much, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. All the presentations were very, very powerful. So what I want to say is that in my research, I identified, let's say, in principle, two ways, two categories of resistance. First, it was the institutional resistance. So here we have all the petitions, individual petitions, collective petitions sent to Marshal Antonescu or to the King Mihai. And in the second part, I identified some songs, poetries collected from the nomad Roma and also from the sedentary Roma. I will not present them now. Now I want to present you this postcard, and I will tell you why. Also, I identified a hero, let's say, yes, from Transnistria. He succeeded to save his family from Transnistria. By his name is Vasile Stratan, and you will see his story in the article. So why I want to share with you this this postal card? Like you can see, it's sent to directly to the Marshal Ion Antonescu, to the presidency of the Council of Ministers. So the people that are signing this postal card, it say here Tzigani, they signed, okay, Roma, owners from Pitești. And also we have the village in which they were deported. It's Yedorovka in Ochakov County. So it's important, I consider it an artifact because they addressed it directly to the Marshal Ion Antonescu. And if we can change the slide. to see what is written on the back. They say that why it's interesting, because from all the petitions that are sent to the authorities, the Roma showed how they were treated in reality by the authorities, because you know that in Romania it was that story that they will receive land and so on in Transnistria. And what is interesting here in this postal card is the fact that they say uh, we just a minute uh, we, they are left on the plain starving to death with children full of lice, beaten by gendarmes and half numb from the cold without any shelter. So in my research, I focused on the idea that all the petitions sent by the soldiers, by individual people, by collective petitions, they had the role to show the real face of the system. I would say it was, if we look to this like a general picture, we see that the Roma resistance in Romania, I, it was something, because the archives contains a lot of petitions sent by ordinary people from Roma, from different communities, entire communities. And it's interesting to see because we have petitions before the deportation to start, because people were afraid that they will be targeted. We have petitions sent after the deportation and so on. So in my opinion, I would say that this is also an act of resistance, because shows that Roma were very active. We don't have any statistic to know how many petitions were sent. Uh, this year, I will publish a book with I think 100 petitions from the soldier, from the Roma soldiers, sent to Antonescu. So this it was like my frame, because also it's important that I found a song and the poetry that are also a form of resistance, but looking to this institutional form of resistance, I think it's much more important, because shows that Roma reacted officially. Also, I will at the beginning of my article, I have one page about about a woman during the slavery, by her name Ioana Rudăreasa. She fought for her freedom for 10 years in a trial with her owners. And what is interesting, she started the trial in 1843 in December. In 1843 in March, it was given the law for the abolition of the slavery in the lines of the slaves of the state. So after a few months, she just started to fight for her freedom. What I want to show in my research is that Roma, they kept, they were, how to say, they were in, they lived with the times in which they were. I mean, they weren't passive to their fate. So also in this postcard.
Thank you, Adrian. I'm sorry for cutting you short here because we are running out of time. So apologies for cutting you short. This is really a fascinating story, and thank you for also showing us how the Roma many times try to use institutional roles to kind of outsmart the oppressor, and how these can also be considered as stories of resistance. And also, as we know from your research, many of them were successful. So this is absolutely outstanding. Thank you so much. And now we are running late, unfortunately. We should have started already now the discussion, but we still, of course, want to hear our researchers first. So I'd just like to say that we have still 3 short presentations. I'd like to ask you to just be very strict on time. So I would like to now bring Dr. Jan Selling, who is helping us to unravel stories of resistance from the perspective of the Nordic countries. And Jan Selling is a very accomplished scholar from Sweden who has been working very much on discussing the issues of historical justice. And he has just now recently published an excellent book about this topic. And he's also a big expert on the questions of anti-Gypsyism and these diverse manifestations. We're really happy to have Jan with us, also contributing to this project. So Jan, we'll put up your presentation. So I would just like to ask you to be brief. Thank you.
Okay. Can I have the presentation? Yeah. And next picture, please. Skip. So please switch the picture. Andrea Petrus. Yes, thank you. So this is the context. This map shows Europe just before the war. As we know, Norway became occupied by Germany and Sweden stayed outside of the war. Form a picture, please. So what is resistance? Maybe my preliminary, I would say, it is to resist unbearable, inhuman conditions, to fight for a better world. So for Roma, the history of the 1930s was an escalation of what had already been going on for centuries. That's my perspective. But now, from the 1930s, there was a new dimension. Nazis were preparing for the Holocaust. Roma were, during this very time, explicitly forbidden to enter Sweden and Norway. At the same time, the oldest Romani groups of Scandinavia, the so-called Resande, were subjected to severe forced assimilation. And importantly, Norway and Sweden practiced a sort of apartheid with the explicit goal to avoid so-called race mixing. Next picture, please. Can I have the next picture? Thank you. Those are the 5 heroes that I will present in the project. Johan Lauritzen became fundamental for the abolition of the forced assimilation system against the group Resand in Norway by a brave televised testimony in 1974. To the left, some members, just a few members of the Josef family survived the Holocaust, and they were the first Roma to manage to enter Norway again and to regain legal status after the war. By juridical action in 1954, they forced the Norwegian state to give up the racist immigration prohibit against Roma. Katarina Taikon, well known, she's of course the iconic rebel and role model par excellence. Hanna and Sofia were 2 cousins, and those are the only Roma Holocaust survivors who managed to get to Sweden, despite of the Swedish immigration prohibition. Both were rescued by the so-called white buses of the Red Cross in May 1945. I will say a few more words about them. Next picture, please. Can I have the next picture? Hanna, yeah, thank you. Brzezinska survived almost 6 years of concentration camps and death camps. She was transferred to forced labor camp near Hamburg shortly before the 2nd of August of 1944. Thus, she survived. In Sweden, she married and lived up in the north. And now important, in 1964, Katarina Taikon's organization, Swedish organization, successfully supported Hanna in her application for compensation from the West German state. And her sake was front page news in Swedish newspapers in 1964. And maybe astonishing, the press was sympathetic and expressed no prejudice. Her life story has become available to a wider audience through the biographic writings of her daughter, Berit Kalander. You see the 2 books there. Next picture, please. Sofia, next one. Sofia Brzezinska, later her name Sofia Taikon. Thank you. She was deported to Auschwitz in March 1943. In spring 1944, also before the 2nd of August, she was transferred to Ravensbrück. During the chaos, shortly before the camp was liberated by the Red Army, she managed to avoid the deadly evacuation marches and was instead picked up by the white buses. Later, also, she successfully applied for compensation from the West German state. Her life story became widely known through a comic album, which was published by the Forum for Living History shortly after her death in 2005. Less well known is that Katarina Taikon already told this story in fictional form in a youth and children's book, Katitsi, in 1976. Now, one way of framing what this next picture, please. Thank you. One way of framing what this webinar is about and what these heroes did is the concept of historical justice, which I have also written about in the Rome archive. Obviously, we cannot change history, but the way we talk about history and address its legacy in material and immaterial terms is fundamental to how we define ourselves and the other. Equally strong, it defines power relations and distribution of resources. We can also see this in the Black Lives Matter debates going on right now about monuments and everything. So fighting for historical justice is fighting for equal rights. Now, last picture, please. These are only some examples of history activism in Scandinavia by Roma. To the left, Romani Rosa attending Holocaust Memorial Day in Stockholm 2014. In the middle, below, Rosa Taikon, sister of Katarina, lecturing about Roma history at Södertörn University. Above, Hans Kaldaras awarded the Katarina Taikon Memorial Prize for his human rights activism. Up to the right, Norwegian Resande, since 1996, every year gather at a specific dates to read a manifesto at the so-called Stone of Shame. So this physical monument is using also in collective ritual. And down below, we see Romanian Roma performing informal street work in the Stockholm subway in 2016, selling the album about Sofia Taikon's life story. So those are only some examples, and I know this is very different from the other stories, and so it's a question how it fits into the concept. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. This fits, I think, perfectly because also we expanded the scope of time. So historical justice is a very useful concept for us. So thank you so much. And we have 2 more speakers. This is really exciting. I would like to present also Vera Lachkova to you. Vera's story is really remarkable because she's a descendant of a Roma partisan fighter. And She's also a film director and a producer from Slovakia. So as you can see, we're also bringing in different types of language and expertise also in terms of evidence finding and evidence presentation in this project. So without further ado, Vera, this is the floor is yours. Please make a short presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. So my research is based on my personal experience, and I would like to ask you first to play the teaser, if it's possible.
Andrea, if you could play the teaser.
Yes, give me just a second.
But we cannot hear the sound. I think, unfortunately. Do you think that we can do something with this that we could hear?
Yes, we tested this before and it did work. So I wonder what happened this time, because we wanted to make sure that we can all see your film. In the meantime, as Andrea's trying to fix it, maybe you could just say a few words, Vera, about the film itself and
Sure.
how it. And if it will not work, I promise we just post it directly on the ERIAC page so that everybody can see.
Yeah. So since I was a child, I loved my grandmother's mysterious stories, and one of those stories was about my great grandmother.
Od malička ma vychovávala moja starka. Často mi hovorila rozprávky pred spaním. O lese.
I think the internet connection makes it a little bit.
Boli o mojom pradedovi. Volal sa Ján Lacko a bol rómsky partizán. Po potlačení povstania ho niekto z miestnych udal. A Gestapo zaviedlo jeho rodinu do lesa. Keď sa vrátil z koncentračného tábora, našiel ich nehybné telá zakryté čečinou. Po vojne si vzal druhú ženu a vychovali spolu 9 detí. Moja starka je najmladšia z nich. Veľa Rómov sa zapojilo do protifašistického odboja, ale v spoločnosti sa o nich nevie nič. Na Hornej Štubni bolo Hitlerjugend?
Áno, bola. Nože, ja som tam bol. Jeden cigán, aby nemusel ísť na vojnu, zobral sekeru, položil si prsty a si odsekol. No, tým sa moc nechce byť ani vojákom, ani nič. Rómovia to je problém, čo ja viem, starodávny.
Mikuláš Olách, partizán v brigáde za slobodu Slovanov. Imrich Horvát, vojak v bitve na Dukle. Anton Facuna, tajný agent angloamerickej spravodajskej skupiny.
Musíme kúpiť krásny kočík.
Bože.
No a?
Ty by si bola najšťastnejšia, kebyže mám dieťa. Ty už len to čakáš.
Áno.
Pred smrťou som dala starkej sľub, že sa postarám o to, aby sa na Rómov v odboji nezabudlo. Jej odkaz mi príde o to silnejší teraz, keď mám na svet priviesť jej vytúžené právnúča. A nie som si istá, ako bude vyzerať naša budúcnosť.
Ľudia mali prácu, bola nedeľa voľná vo fašizme. Uvažujte, že čo im dal Hitler? Hitler im dal slobodu.
Celá Európa sa radikalizuje. A preto som sa rozhodla, že musím dodržať sľub, ktorý som dala starkej. A príbeh Rómov v odboji odozdám ďalšej generácii.
I'm really sorry that the techniques and the internet did not continue, but yeah, I can tell you about it. So I, based on the story of my great-grandfather, I decided to go to the archives as I promised to my grandmom. I found out that he was not the only partisan who participated in the resistance. There was more, but the society doesn't know about it. And I started to question myself how it is possible. And that's why I decided to become the modern partisan through my film and to save the stories of the forgotten heroes from my partisans against oblivion. I hope that together with you researchers and with ERIAC, we can put also more light on this topic, and that the stories of Roma partisans and resistors will be seen or will be more visible in society. So my film is now in late post-production, and we plan premiere in 2021. So that's shortly from my side.
Thank you, Vera. We are extremely excited about this, and apologies for these technicalities. I think it was almost painful to see it because you can see that the film is beautiful and there's so much emotion and quality in it. So we will publish it also somewhere on our website, if that's okay with you, so that others can also see it and be as excited as we are about the premiere. So thank you, Vera, for being part of this project and for sharing with us this little secret of the teaser. And then last but not least, we have here Nicolas Jimenez. Nicolas, hi. We are very happy to have Nicolas also with us because Spain is a country with the second biggest population size in Europe of Roma. And it seems that we really don't know enough about the suffering they had to endure and also the survival and resistance stories that Spanish history has. So Nicolas Jimenez is a sociologist and very much experienced both in institutional work, but also in NGOs and as a scholar. And he's now editing a very interesting book, Pretendemos Gitanizar el Mundo. For those of you who speak Spanish, I definitely recommend it. It's a really great source of knowledge and stories about Roma. So just without further ado, Nicolas, the floor is yours, and thank you for waiting. Sorry for the delays.
Hi, how are you? I am very pleased to be today with you because you are a very, very interesting people of you, very intelligent and very good researched. I feel there because maybe I am not in the same level of you. Good. As you know, please, the other slide, please. As you know, Spain don't take part in the Second World War, was neutral. It means that we have not a resistance movement, Roma resistance movement, like everybody understand for this concept. We have, anyway, we have different resistance events in our history, but not is. I think the Spanish Roma resistance don't fit exactly in the concept of resistance that we have. Next, please. Next slide. Can you change? Thank you. The most recent resistant event was during the Civil War. That in Franco regimes, the Romani people and image and so on was instrumentalized by the power in order to reinforce the folklore stereotypes and in a way that the most of the people, the Spanish general people and also the Roma think that Franco regime was good for Roma because we are a people who don't fight for our freedom and we only sing and dance and so on. But it is not true. We have people who fight against the dictatorship. During the Civil War, we can find people like Helios Gomez or Mariano Vázquez. Mariano Vázquez was the General Secretary of the CNT Union. CNT Union was the biggest labor union. It was anarchist. It was one of the biggest force fighting against dictatorship in the Republican side. You know? And Mariano Vázquez was Roma and was the General Secretary in that time. And Helios Gomez also was a very important man in the promotion of the fighting. He were in the front, speaking to the people or making cartel graphic to encourage the people to fight. You know, it's very, very interesting. And also there was women like Casilda Arnaiz, which was militia or partisan, anarchist also, or Maria Lozano, which was member of Solidaridad Internacional Antifascista, one of the first shot by the Franco dictatorship in Madrid. Solidaridad Internacional Antifascista was organization, anti-fascism organization. Next, please. Can you change, please, the slide? Sorry. Can you change the slide, please? Thank you.
Yes, I think it takes.
Okay. Some photos of this Romani woman and men. Please, the next one, please. This revolution, this revolt, La Jamancia, whose name derives from the Spanish Romani verb jamar, in English to eat, or comer in español. It comes from the Romani verb tejal. This is a historical event which the most of the Spanish people don't know. Even in Catalonia, is very it is no well known, this episode, this historical revolt, but we don't know exactly what's the role of the Roma people in this revolt, because till now we have not enough data, but we think that there was a big protagonism, a big role for Roma, because the name comes from a Romani word. Then it is impossible to be outside of this for the Roma. And we have the idea to advance something in this, in the knowledge of this La Jamancia. Can you change, please? In the middle of the 18th century was a great roundup or the general imprisonment of Roma. It was a genocide, really. In the current language, it was really a genocide. The practical total amount of the Roma population in Spain was put in prisons, and was Roma men and Roma women was separated by gender, and was used like slave workers, slave labor, and that in all their imprisonment, both men and women staged all kind of acts of insurrection, mass escapes, rebellion, raids, but till now it is not well known in Spain, because the very few people who research on this topic only saw the view from the law, from the power, but not so much put the focus on the real Roma or the people. We know, in order to put some names, the name of Rosa Cortés, which who led uprising of women in a prison, or Domingo Quirós in another led that riot of men.
Nicolas, this is great. I'm really sorry to be cutting you off like this. I know this is your last slide, so this is why I took the liberty to cut you off. This is really fascinating, and your scope of really searching so far in time is also absolutely great, because as you said, much of our history, especially the farther down in history we are, the more difficult it is to recover these stories. So this is so valuable for us. So we were supposed to run this seminar today until 6:30, but as you know, we had some delays of our key guests and some technicalities. So if you will agree, I'd like to continue for 15-20 minutes more, just so that we can get some of the discussions and some of the questions confronted. So if that's fine with you, those of you who can stay with us, please do. We also have a number of attendees, guests who are not visible here on the screen, but who are with us. And to those of you who are not panelists, you can raise your hand and ask questions, and we will give you the floor so that you can also comment. But first of all, I'd like to welcome Saimir Mile. I'm really excited to have Saimir, because Saimir is a man of many trades and many talents, but above all, a very committed militant and a brain kind of intellectual of the Roma movement and of Roma history as well. And I'd like to kick off this discussion with you, Saimir, just for those of you to know, Saimir is a scholar apart from being an activist, but he has also had a very important role in building the Roma resistance. Through the organization La Voix de Rome, that the Roma resistance story of Auschwitz-Birkenau became more widely known and commemorated. And Saimir, you were one of the kind of brain, designers of these commemorations, and helped us to unravel this story, and then made it into a film that is today. So I'd like to ask you, from your perspective, How has this discourse of Roma resistance evolved since the last decade, really? And do you see any changes? Do you see a positive development in this regard? And I'd like you to start. And as I said, we have about 15 minutes for the discussion, and then I invite everybody to ask their questions too. So, Samir, thank you for waiting and for being with us.
Okay, thank you very much, Anna. Hello to everyone. I was really very happy to listen to all those interventions. It is really beautiful. Yeah, I feel so happy that this has taken such a great scope.
Samir, I think some people are giving me signs that there's something with your microphone. I wonder if you could unmute your and try to go with your computer. Maybe it's going to have a better microphone because we cannot hear you. I think it might be the cable of your headset. Can you try to unplug and let's see if is this better?
Yeah, this is without cable. Is it okay? Can you hear me? No.
Hello?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, now we can hear you. Oh, this is much better. Yes? Could you say something, Samir, just so that make sure that we can hear now? Samir, could you say something, please, so that we can see if we could hear you like a few minutes before, but now I don't know. Could you say something, please? Samir, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Could you say something, please, Samir?
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes, now we can hear you. Please don't move so much because maybe it's your internet connection too.
Yes. Just 1 second. I'm so sorry. I am in Albania at this moment, so the family is calling from different places. So here I am. I was saying I'm very happy to see how wide this concept is now, and how it has occupied so many minds and activities wherever in Europe. Well, the history of it. We should say thank you also to someone. You will be maybe surprised, but we should say thank you to Nicolas Sarkozy for this also. Actually, in 2010, well, of course, first of all, we have to say thank you for real to Raymond Gurem, which passed away a few months ago now, and who was a great friend of ours, and which we met in that time in 2009. So the Romani resistance came from the very first discussions that we have with Raymond in France. Then in 2010, you remember the tension between the French government and the European Commission and Romania about the Romanian immigrants, Romani people migrating in France, that national plan of evicting people, and the official discourse used then, the presidency of France, Nicolas Sarkozy, used the word war. He said, we will make a war against those among the Romani people who misbehave or whatever. So we were in a very martial discourse and situation in that time. So in the same time, it was in booklet of the Communist Party of Germany that a friend of mine, a unionist in France, found an article about the Romani people during the internment and the concentration camps, and there was a paragraph there speaking about this uprising on 16th of May. So we decided on 16th of May 2010 for the first time to have a celebration, a public event with music, with discourses, with speeches, and with a message of resistance. But we didn't know in that time that this would become later on with Sarkozy's crisis, the real software of our activism. And so this is why I say that actually we have to thank first Raymond, of course, and then also Sarkozy and that very particular political situation which continues nowadays, maybe less intensively than in that time, but we still have it now. So this is about the genesis of this Romani resistance spirit, which nowadays is spread all over Europe, and which inspires the thinking and the research and also the actions of so many people.
Thank you, Saimir. This sounds good. Would you like to very briefly just reflect, because you started with, I'm surprised how wide the concept has become. So do you see that we have managed to somehow expand the spirit with which you created these first events, inspired in really La Résistance of Raymond, which has been just amazing for us in being this inspirational source. So do you think we managed to really move beyond, and do you think this is a positive development?
It is a wonderful development, but on the other hand, I apply to myself, and in my work especially, I always apply a principle which is always happy, never satisfied. So it is beautiful, but we still have something to change. And that thing that we have to change, and I will say a big bravo to Adrian Fortuna, which and also I just discovered what Nico is doing, for instance, or the girl from Slovakia. Sorry for don't remember her name.
Vera Lačková.
So these things, what we are missing, and we are just starting now. I feel that actually the Romani resistance is quite successful in our advocacy, but not yet so widespread in the communities in terms of empowerment of the people. So this is why I have seen, Adrian, we never had a chance to meet really in person, actually, but I have seen videos of you, Adrian, going on in the communities and speaking with the Romani families in their yards about the slavery, about resistance, and about the deportation and so on. So this is really, I will say, somnakuni buti, to put it in our language. It is a beautiful work that we have to develop in the communities, really.
That's great.
But we are on the good track, that's for sure.
That's great. Thank you. So I would like to make a second comment, and this is already open to you. But before I do that, could everybody put their cameras on, because we'd like to make a group photo with all of your faces present. So I would like those of you who are not with their camera on to just put for a moment the camera so we can have a nice screenshot of this meeting. Thank you. And my second question is, we wanted to frame this meeting or this discussion from victimhood to heroism, and whether this is really a new Roma historical narrative. This is because the story of the Roma people has been for the massive amount of time really written from a perspective of a third person, and as I said before, also from a perspective of a community that's anonymous, that is like kind of like an organism without individuals, without leaders, without the heroes. And I wonder whether you have this opinion that this is important, that somehow there is a shift in building a historical narrative for the Roma people as well, that it's a little bit different. So I'd like to ask you whether you think this is happening, and Secondly, also why it is important. And this is a question that I'm posing to all of you. So also scholars, dear scholars and researchers, feel free to also chip in. And after this question, we'll give a round of questions and comments to our attendees.
Well, if I'll answer shortly this, saying that actually, the very fact that it exists today, a people, diverse, of course, but a distinct people with its own identity, based on language or history or whatever, traditions, whatever. This is the best tangible proof that we are the product of resistance, because 5 centuries of systemic and systematic oppression in Europe, I don't believe that some other people has endured so much and has still an existence as a people today. So our very existence is the most tangible proof of the fact that we always resisted, that our ancestors resisted, that we are resisting. Then in terms, we are shifting, and this is actually something revolutionary that we're doing, shifting from the status of victim to the status of the resistant. Not obligatory the heroes, because heroes are, we have to be ordinary heroes too. Each person can be a hero in an ordinary way. Living is an act of heroism when living is something that it is denied to you. The very fact that you are living is then an act of resistance, of heroism. Now, speaking about the specific domain of research, there are things which are to be done and which are acts of resistance. For instance, in the beginning, Anna, you reminded the Museum of Auschwitz-Birkenau, saying that on 16th of May, there is no track of that act of resistance or so on. Okay, so what? So what? I mean, if you stick to disciplines of research and to rules, disciplinary rules, then of course maybe this was not the 16th. Maybe we are making a mistake there. It was not the 16th, but the 17th or the 14th of in April or whatever. So what? This is not the most important. And this reminded me that people saying, you know, there is this saying that when the finger shows the moon, the fool stares at the finger. Let's not be fooled, let's not stare at the finger. The fact is that there has been resistance there. The fact is that Otto Rosenberg, a Sinto who was in Auschwitz-Birkenau, describes in his book, A Gypsy in Auschwitz, how he and his cousin gave the alert to the 2 lines of the barracks when the SS came in the spring, he says, in the spring 44. We don't have the date precisely there, but there is the thing. So sorry for believing, for trusting a survivor who wrote a book, which is very rare, and not for searching in the archives of the Nazis, because actually the real sources, according to disciplinary rules of history, of course, the real sources are the documents left by the Nazis, those that they could not destroy, actually. So we have there too, there is some resistance necessary from the researchers. In the way that we research, we can resist and we should resist. And we owe this resistance to those who resisted in the camps or elsewhere. So this is also one of the improvements that are on the way anyway.
Very good. Thank you, Saimir. I have Daniel Voyak who has raised his hand. So Daniel, please, the floor is yours. And then Andrea, if you could give the space also to Ashmet, who has raised his hand. And after Ashmet, it will be Nico. Please be short in your interventions because it's already late, and just so that everybody has a moment to speak.
For me, I can agree with Samir, but I want to just clarify that we have a researcher and we have activism. In this case, in this context, they must be connected, but activism cannot be influenced on the research. Why? Because research is true researcher is based only on the archive, testimony, collective documents, and so on, and analyzing. For me, another researcher for team, we are now in a time where we can freely research with a lot of support, for example, by ERIAC and other institutions. For example, when I started 20 years ago, nobody in Croatia or ex-Yugoslavia have institutional support for continuous research. Now it's different. Now we have continuously political, financial, and other support by the Roma NGOs, by the Croatian Roma politician, and I would say by the whole ministry. Now it is good time for researcher, but I must emphasize, because we have a lot of time restriction, at the end I want to say, in the context, I would say, of the Balkans, I hate this word, but okay, we still need support for continuous research. We are not at the end, not at the middle. We are in the first half of the researcher. We are now 70 years after the tragedy of the Roma, still fighting by daily basis new documents, but without person, as Anna said it, we don't have any Roma surviving testimony. And also, one more thing, revisionism historiographic is in enlargement, and there are a lot of pressure on us researchers for forbidding research in the archives and so on. We can open this discussion, but we will see.
No, thank you, Daniel, also for these words of caution and for the importance of continuous research. I now have Ashmet. Welcome, Ashmet. Thank you. Thank you for being with us. The floor is yours to make a short comment, and then I have Nico and Justina.
First of all, I would like to thanks for ERIAC and especially for my sister Anna and Timea for help me to give me the power to organize this in Balkan, in Macedonian, and about the presentation of all of these my colleagues, special Samir, Andrea, all of you. I would like to tell you and to wish you the God to bless you, and you to go and continue to find the document and to analyze and to send the voice about all these historical, very terrible process of Roma, because in history, till now, Roma and today is the victims. My message is, because when I starting in 1907 to start in Balkan by journalists to analyze, to see how was going, who was victims, and where partisan or transportation, Jasenovac, Belgrade, Kraljevo, Macedonia, Kumanovo, in more fabric, etc., etc. More document from ex-Yugoslavian have lost. Why? I think that this was political, to not to have argument that more Roma was the victim and the resistant of the Holocaust. But today, with this hard work and your how tell you the leading of us, I think, but real people, I not like to tell Roma or no Roma. All of us is the people. All of us have inside the soul and understand the blood of the Roma in the last more year or our family. And today blood what's happening about the biggest Tsiganism, is the very terrible. More leader in country today in political government is not political people, is the manipulant, is the profiter. And my message is, thank you very much. God to bless you. Go in your work, and I will be with my people, with my colleague, with young people every time to promote what is the reality. You create the real story, because what I listen, what I look today, something, this is new for me. And have one sequence for one film for Emir Kusturica. Every day I have something new learning. And
Thank
today
you, Ahmed.
I learning more. Thank you very much. God
Thank
to
you
bless
so
you.
much, and really thank you for the supportive message, also from what coming also from Macedonia and the work that you've been doing locally. It's really important. And based on what you also said, I have an interesting question here in the chat from Julius Rostash, area board member and one of the founders of the Critical Romani Studies Scholarly Discourse, if I may say so. And Julius is asking, how are the rewriting history projects of some circles influence the narratives of Roma Holocaust and resistance? I am particularly interested in Lithuania, Croatia, and Ukraine. So maybe you could also reflect about this kind of historical revisionism and how this has been influencing also our work. So in the meantime, I'm saying goodbye to Jan Selling, who is waving goodbye. I have Nico and Justina, so please be very short. We have only 5 more minutes.
Thank you. I am absolutely happy and absolutely satisfied. And you will realize why. Some 40 years ago, just to imagine this situation, we're sitting in front of the computer and seeing your faces discussing our history, it was absolutely impossible, at least in the Soviet Union. And I suppose in Romania, in ex-Yugoslavia, etc., etc. Despite in Yugoslavia, Trifun Dimic, Rajko Đurić, and many intellectuals, even in the communist era, were very visible. Now, here, no. So I'm happy and satisfied because it was the resistance of many of our parents, which didn't want their children go to school, go to universities. So as Samir said, yes, we are in continuous resistance, sure. And I started my research work, so said, with this idea that we are a product of resistance, really, absolutely. And we are not, as Julius asked, we are not rewriting history. We are not rewriting, we are writing it. Thank you.
Thank you, Nico, for your comments, and also thank you for being brief. Justina, floor is yours.
So I just would like to make a short comment in the case of Roma pricing in Auschwitz-Birkenau. So according to recent research done by Joanna Talewicz-Kwiatkowska, who is also a Roma scholar, there are 3 more testimonies and statements confirming the event of Roma resistance in Auschwitz-Birkenau, and they confirm also the statement described by the statement by Joachimowski, who was the former prisoner of Auschwitz camp, and yeah, so that's it. So I'd like to say that there is more
Thank
testimony.
you.
There are some
Thank
more
you,
testimony.
Justina. Actually, this is quite fortunate because that quite controversial tweet made last year around this time by the Auschwitz Museum actually pushed many of us, not only Eriak, but I think many other people to really defend the Roma resistance discourse and pointed us in the right direction to unravel all of the other stories. I have a feeling we could really spend hours like this, just sitting together and discussing both the cases and the specific findings, but also the broader questions of historical narratives, of the philosophy, of research methods. And I think it only shows that we need spaces like this, we need forums like this to be with each other and to unravel so much history that is still unwritten. But unfortunately, I don't think I can keep you here much longer. So I will be closing down today's meeting slowly. I would like to ask Tima if you have any final comments or questions before we close.
Yes. So I would like to say that we continue the research. As you heard from my introduction with Stiftung EWZ, we will be trying to look for a long-term cooperation. So your support and your agreement today with us on the importance of the topic and the continued research is very important. I'm personally extremely humbled because I can feel that what we saw today is only the tip of a gigantic mountain of knowledge that you're able to share with us. And of course, I always thought that this is the research that we want to show to the young generations because it's transformative, inspirational, and super political. It was an honor to listen to you and learn from you today, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Timea.
We can say goodbye and wave to each other.
I would just like to very short, just to mention that this project is, just as Timea said, the tip of an iceberg, but we are preparing a few different products that will be accessible widely to Roma and non-Roma on all levels of education. Just to reveal a little bit of the secrets coming up, there will be a publication that will bring together all of your amazing knowledge. Katia Dunaeva is the editor of this book together with me. We are striving for an ambitious peer-reviewed academic volume that will also be available not only in print but also as an open source book. But apart from that, we will have online tools that will refer to the findings that so many of you have brought to us. So not only the stories of the resistance heroes, but also the places, the sites of Roma resistance, and also the annotated bibliography, which will serve as a tool to gather more knowledge. So we will be posting about this in the upcoming weeks on the ERIAC website. So those of you who have been with us as audience, both on the live stream and here and in the Zoom, thank you so much. Watch our website and our social media channels to learn more about amazing things that are going to be coming out of the research that has been done. And mostly thank you to all of you, dear researchers and collaborators in this project, for bringing all this knowledge to us. So thank you again. Thank you for your time. Apologies for the delays and hope to see you very soon. Take care. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.